All right, let's go ahead and get started. Can you guys hear me okay? Perfect. Okay, well, welcome to week 2 of DES103, beginning vector illustration. Today we're going to be covering actually some pretty powerful stuff that is going to, well, depending on the person, it's likely to frustrate you in the beginning. I'm going to be straightforward with that. It frustrated me when I first learned it. But as you hopefully will get some good techniques down and get it to where you can move past that and quickly. And then you'll find it's one of the most powerful tools that we can use in Illustrator, and it also exists in several other applications in a less powerful form than it is in Illustrator as well. So look forward to that. And we're also going to talk about a couple of things that that came up last week that I want to make sure that everyone's clear on. Before we do that, though, let's jump into our class and talk about a few announcements here. All right. So the biggest one this week, we've got Thanksgiving, right? So Thanksgiving's on Thursday. That's when we do our multi-session here. So we won't be having our multi-session this week. The school and the multi-sessions for Friday, I believe, will also be canceled. So it's going to be the Tuesday and Wednesday multi-sessions that will be available. Now, the Student Success Center is going to be closed on Thursday as well, but they will have hours available on Friday and on Saturday. And I'm going to post those hours here in the announcements as soon as I receive them. So if you need some help, one-on-one help during the weekend, they'll be available on Friday and Saturday. I will probably not be accessible through email on Thursday or Friday. I'll try to jump in on Saturday and check and see what I've got. But just so you know, those are 2 days that I'll be gone as well. So just keep that in mind. We do have all the other multi-sessions. We've got some on Tuesday and Wednesday. And again, you can look into this announcement here that says 100-level multi-session schedule mod 12 for more information on those. And then I've posted our learning coaches schedule in here as well. So Christy is going to be on Wednesday from 12 to 7 this week. Okay. Another announcement I have in here is that I finished all the grading for week 1. Many of you have already seen that. Oh, sorry, just reading the note there. No, in the next one, I mean, I'll be going through like some things that were common misunderstandings of last week. I want to make sure everyone's clear on. So I definitely would watch the recording of the 20 minutes you missed, but it'll probably take you longer than that to get into the main stuff. And the recording will be available. I'll post it right when we're done here. My guess is probably about 3:30 Mountain Time, somewhere around there would be when I email it out and put it in the class. All right. So with your grades, make sure and go in and click on the grade itself. Okay. You want to click on the score, and then you want to click on a thing that says show rubric, because the rubric is where I write the more detailed information, more detailed feedback on what you turned in. It's broken down into parts, and it has, if you lost any points, I have detailed information on what caused you to miss them. And so make sure you read those. And like I said last week, if you missed any points and would like to revise those and resubmit it, then you're more than welcome to do that. And I will regrade it again on Monday and adjust your score accordingly. Okay. Also, if something happened and you weren't able to get your week 1 work in on time, again, make sure you get that in. You still can turn it in. And I'll be grading those again on next Monday. There's just a deduction for the late submission. All right. So jumping back over here, one thing I want to make sure, let me go into Illustrator here. Oh, came up on the wrong screen. There we go. So a couple of things I want to make sure we're clear on just going forward, because these are common things that I saw commonly that threw people off. One, when you're doing a template layer, when you're doing a layer that you're planning on tracing, you want that to be the only thing in that layer. Okay, so one of the things that kind of threw people off, I think, is that last time, you'd done all the stuff on artboard number 1 already, and you'd done all the stuff on artboard number 2 already. And so here, let me open a file that's similar, that's laid out the same as what last week's would have been. Okay, so here's the 3 artboards. So if you look at my layers, let's just say that I did something on layer 1, on artboard number 1, and then I went over and I did something else on artboard number 2, and now I'm down here on artboard number 3, and I'm ready to lay out my template for my tracing. Well, layer 1 already has things on it. Layer 1 has the stuff I did for artboard number 1, has the stuff I did for artboard number 2. So if I put the picture on here and then change layer 1 into a template layer, then I've got a problem, because these are going to be part of that template layer. So if I hide my template, these will vanish too. If I when I go to print my document, these won't print, because template layers don't print or export to PDF. So I don't want that template layer to be on a layer with anything else. So at this point, what I would do is I'd make a new layer. Come down here and click to say I want a new layer. Then let's just pretend that my template is going to be of this thing here. And so now I've got my template laid out there. Now I'm going to double click on the layer that has the template, click the template checkbox, and click OK. And then I'm going to make a new layer, another one, and that's what I'm going to actually do my tracing on. Okay, so I've got one layer that had all the stuff I did before, and then I have a template layer. Now, if I'd wanted to, I could have just dragged my template down below layer 1 and continued to draw on layer 1 down here. That would work too. But the most important thing is that the template layer is alone. The template layer needs to just have the file, or if there's multiple files, whatever you want to be the template should be on its own layer, so that the other things can function differently. Okay, does that make sense? Any questions about that? Okay. So this next thing I want to talk about isn't so much, it's something that I did see come up once or twice last week, but it's more something that's going to be useful going forward. We would have talked about it this week anyway. So before we jump into stuff for this week, I don't want that one. I want my single artboard. Before we jump into things for this week, I want to demonstrate something that's pretty integral to how Illustrator works, okay? So let's just say that I'm working with the line segment tool, okay? And I draw a line like this. And I draw, now, well, first of all, we're going to be talking a lot about this week too. So let's talk about this line. The way Illustrator sees this line is 2 points and then a line connecting those 2 points, right? So I've got a point here on this end, and I've got a point here on this end, and I've got a line connecting them, okay? So I'm going to go to my line segment tool, and I'm going to make another line segment right here. And I'm going to make another line segment right here. And I'm going to make a last line segment right here, okay? So here I've drawn with line segments a rectangle. Now I'm going to take my rectangle tool, and I'm going to draw another rectangle tool, okay? So I've got 2 rectangles. This one's a little off, more of a parallelogram, but I'm going to select this rectangle that I did with the rectangle tool, and I'm going to go to my fill, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to fill it with red, okay? Now I'm going to select this rectangle that I did with line segments, and I'm going to go to my fill, and I'm going to fill this one red too. As you can see, it didn't fill. Nothing happened to it. So here's why. Illustrator does not see this as a rectangle. Illustrator sees this as 4 lines that just happen to be touching each other. It doesn't see it as a closed off shape. And here's the reason why. If I zoom in on any one of these points in the corner, there's actually 2 points here. There's the point that's the end of this line, and there's the point that's the end of this line. So it sees it as 2 totally separate things. There's this point and there's this point. It just so happens those points are in the same place at the moment, but there's still 2 of them. With this rectangle, that's not the case. There's 1 point, And this line, there's a line that goes from this point down here to that point, and then a line leaves this point and goes to the next one. And so this is all one thing, where this is four things that just happen to be touching each other. And it can't fill that. It can't fill four things like that. It needs to see it, well, the way we're doing it. I should put a caveat on that. We're going to learn a technique in a later week where you can make it do that. But by default, it does not fill that. It doesn't see it as a fillable thing. Okay. Now, that said, I can change these lines into, exactly, Christina says that right there, I can join it. I can change these lines into a shape. I can do it a couple of ways. The simplest way, and this is actually a pretty new thing, so it's called the join tool. It's under the shape builder tool. If I go to this one right here, it's the shaper tool, I mean. You've got your rectangle tool. Just under that is what's called the shaper tool, and there's a bunch of them underneath that. The join tool is the one I'm looking for, okay? And if I take the join tool and I just run it over points, it turns those into one point. You see that? It connected them together as a single shape. What would happen if they weren't touching? So here I've got these two and they're far apart. And I'm going to go back to that join tool and I'm going to run across them. You'll see it actually just extends the lines until they do touch. So this is a way to basically connect those points together as a single point and turn this from being four lines into being an actual rectangle. Does that make sense? All right. Now, another way I can do that, and I'm just going to show you this because there are occasions where this is useful. It used to be the only way to do it, but there's still occasions when it's a good way to go this way. Another way I can do that is using what's called the join function. It's up in the menus. And the way I would do that is I would select my direct selection tool, because I don't want to select the whole thing, just these points. And I would just draw a little square around the points I want to select. So now those are selected. And then I can go to Object and Path, and I have Join in there. Now this one actually acts a little bit differently. Watch what happens. I'm going to move them away from each other like so. And then I'm going to do that same thing and go Object and Path and Join. And you'll see it's actually going to draw a little line between. Where the other one extended those lines till they met, this one draws a little line between them. So if there's ever a time that's what you want, the join function up there is what's going to do that. There's also a function up there where I can say Object and join and Path and choose Average. And in this case, I'm saying I want to move these points so they're in the same place. Right now, they're not in the same place. I want them to be in the same place. So I choose Average, and I can choose whether to average them horizontally, which is side to side, or average them vertically, which is up and down. I want to do both. I want them to be the same side to side, same up and down, which means exact same place. And you'll see it just moves them so they're on each other, and then I could go to that join one. So again, that's a little more, ever since they introduced the join tool, that way is a little more complicated. So you're usually just going to use the join tool. But that's just something to keep in mind. If you ever have things that you've drawn that just aren't filling the way you want them to fill, look at that possibility. Is it that it's not actually a shape? Is it that you've drawn multiple parts of a shape, but they're not actually connected together as a shape? Okay. Oh, hi, Chris. Thanks for coming. So one last thing I wanted to talk about, and this can be a little confusing when you're dealing with the direct select tool, okay? So I just drew a rectangle. Right after you draw something, it's selected, right? I don't have to go to the selection tool and select it. You can see by the bounding box that it's already selected. If I go to the direct selection tool, the direct selection tool acts upon anything that's already selected. So if I were to go grab this point and try to move it, it's going to move the whole thing. And the reason why is because the whole thing is selected. So what you need to do is you need to deselect it first. You can do that just by clicking anywhere where it's not. I click over to the side, see it's all deselected now. Or under select, there's actually a deselect option, which is Shift-Command-A on a Mac or Shift-Control-A on a Windows computer. Now that it's deselected, I can select just the part I want to move and move that. Okay? So anyway, those were a few issues that I saw come up last week that I just wanted to make sure everyone was clear on before we move forward. All right. So let's talk about our let's talk about our week 2 discussion. Okay. Our week 2 discussion has to do with creating custom workspaces in Illustrator. Okay. You may have seen this already in Photoshop. You'll definitely see it in Design. The workspace, the area you're working in, is highly customizable. There's all sorts of things you can do to make this work better for the project that you're working on. Okay. So for example, I can come over and I can click on these little 2 arrows to collapse this so this takes up less room, and I just click on the one I want to bring out. Click those again to pull them out. I can go to Window and bring out any of these panels here. Let's say that I bring out the brushes panel, and I can have it free floating like this. I can come and pop it in, on with these ones. I can pull ones off of those ones. I've got all sorts of things. I can group them together. So these are highly customizable. And I'm just going to go over this briefly because there's a lot of this in the other video too, but highly, highly customizable in this way. I've also got saved workspaces. I go up here, I'm on Essentials. I've changed Essentials now, but I could go Essentials and say Reset Essentials and put it back the way it was before I made these changes. I've got other presets that are saved in here. Like if I click Typography, this has got ones out that specifically thinks are very useful when working with typography. You can see it's brought out another panels bar right here. You can save your own workspaces. Let's say you set up a bunch of panels the way that are very useful when you're working on a particular type of project. You can come up here and you can click on New Workspace. Call it whatever you want, and you'll always have it there to immediately switch to whenever you want. Over here in my tools, I can click these two arrows to make them too wide and like shorter. I can pull off the whole toolbar, stick it somewhere else if I want. I can, let's stick it back over there. I can go up to Window and Toolbars and create a new toolbar. Call it whatever I want, and I can put new tools on it that are sticking somewhere else. I can click on any, let's say I go to these ones and I'm going to be using these shapes quite a bit, but I don't want to have to keep coming over here, and some of them don't have keyboard shortcuts. I can go over to the very right and click on that little arrow, pull the whole thing off, stick it over here where it's floating and easily accessible to me. You notice it's still there. I didn't remove it, but it's kind of pulled off a panel for me to work with. So tons and tons of stuff that I can do in order to customize my workspace into something that is more, efficient for what I'm trying to work on at the time. And the more you work in here, the more you're going to, learn what you like and set things up the way you like them set up. And so that's what our discussion this week is on. If we go to modules and the week 2 discussion, it says customizing Illustrator's workspace. I'm going to skip the background again. Make sure to read the background. I'm going to come straight down to the prompt. And it says, for this week's discussion, consider the assignment you completed for last week where you built illustrations using shapes, strokes, colors, and layers. Now consider which panels are available within Illustrator by default while you contemplate the following scenario. You've been asked to create a project that includes typography, multiple colors and patterns, and even a few images. How would you change the workspace? Define 5 or more panels and windows that you would add, group together, or close. Based on your research on custom workspaces, when do you think it's a good idea to create and save a unique space? How many workspaces might you save and why? And so you're basically just going to discuss that scenario. What things, based on last week, which of these might you not even need? Like, for example, for what we did last week, I wouldn't need the libraries panel. Some programs or some projects I do, but maybe I'd close the libraries panel. Maybe I'd bring out, if I'm doing type, maybe I'd bring out the character styles and paragraph styles panels because I don't want to go back to them regularly. So you're just going to talk about that and talk about when is it a situation when you may want to create a custom workspace, like I showed you how you can save one custom there. Okay. So any questions on that topic there? And if you just do a Google search for, customize Illustrator workspace, you should get a bunch of things on there as well. So on this one, just like last week, remember our initial post is due on Wednesday at 11:59 p.m. And then we're going to need to do at least 2 additional posts that are responding to the posts that each other made. And those posts need to be at least 50 words each. They need to be done by Saturday at 11:59 p.m. And they should add to the discussion. And then again, make sure that you're participating in some way or another on at least 2 days of the week for full credit on this. Okay? Any questions at all on the discussion for this week? All right. Let's look next. That's completely up to you, Christina. That would be a great way to kind of back up things you're saying and illustrate them for sure. It's not required, but that would definitely be something that could work really well to do. All right. So let's take a look at our assessment next. Our assessment, this is on the difference between handles and points. And we're actually going to be talking a fair amount about handles and anchor points today. But this assessment, it's called the didactic assessment. Oh, sorry, just reading Chris's question. Does the workspace have to be a specific way? No, you just need to be able to back up why you feel like this would be a good way for the workspace to be. Does that make sense? Like, for example, I have a lot of coworkers who really like having their workspaces in the Adobe products look like this. So what I've got here is a free floating window rather than it being locked in. It's like they like to have it like that, and they switch back and forth. Personally, I find that messy. I don't like it. But that used to be the way they all worked. So a lot of them, that's just what they're used to, and they like that familiarity. So again, it's not necessarily that one is a right way and one is a wrong way. It's more just like what works for you and why. Like if you can't, if I say, oh, I think that when I'm working, I definitely need to have the graphic styles panel out, that's fine, but why? You know what I mean? If I can't back up a reason why I feel like that's a good thing to have out, then that doesn't necessarily work. But if I have a reason why, well, I like being able to do this, then okay, great. To scroll zoom, I'm not actually sure, but you can do a pinch zoom. That's how I do the zoom quite often when you see me doing this. I'm on my trackpad, and I'm just pinching in and out with my fingers. Yeah, the Wacom, I think the Wacom can do that too. It might be a setting, but yeah, I think the Wacom can do the pinch zoom too. I know that the Wacom can be set, and I couldn't tell you how to do it because it's been a long time since I've done it, but I know the Wacom can be set where basically like you do a tap and drag and it zooms, or a keyboard controller and a drag to zoom. Yeah, so Christina uses the keyboard shortcuts, like a command zoom or control zoom. I think it would be control. It would be Control Plus on a Windows computer. Yeah, that's a very common. That's a lot of people really like to use the keyboard on that too. The scroll zoom. Like I said, I think the settings for that are actually in, if I remember correctly, they're in the Wacom settings. It's not necessarily in the Illustrator settings. I think there's a setting in your like Wacom control panel where you can tell it how you want it to be able to zoom in here. But I could be wrong about that. I have one, but I haven't used it for about probably 5 years. And I used to play around with it a lot that way. Yeah, I'm not sure. So in the way I had it set up, it would show up in my system preferences. Like there was an actual like preference in here for the Wacom, and it had settings like that in there. But again, that was a long time ago. All right, so back to the assessment here. This is an assessment on the differences between anchor points and handles and what you do with those things. Like I said, we're going to talk quite a bit about that today. Oh, no problem, Chris. But the other thing I want you to know about is this. You have unlimited time on this assessment, and you have unlimited attempts on this assessment. So if you get an answer wrong, go in and correct it. Because you can get a perfect score on this just by doing it until you get a perfect score. And the plus side on that too is that you're going to really understand it well. And this is handles and anchor points are a big part of working with Illustrator, starting with the kind of stuff that we're going to be doing today. Okay, so any questions on the assessment for this week? Yeah. All right. So before we get into our assignment then, I want to go over a few tools that the assignment is going to be utilizing, okay? So that we're all ready to use those when we actually get in and look at the assignment itself. So let's talk about a couple of different tools that are pretty useful in here. One, I want to talk about, we've already talked about the line segment tool. We just did it very briefly. The line segment tool is under my shape tools, and it's just literally click and drag. Although, was it under my shape tool before? You see, yeah. So you're just going to click and drag, and it just makes a line. It's about as simple as you can get. Click and drag makes a line. Okay. These lines, just like anything else, it can be manipulated. If I grab it with the selection tool, I can drag it. If I use the direct select tool, I can grab just one point, move it like that, and I'm ready to go. Okay. So that's a very simple one, but you might be using some of that today. So let's talk next about one that's also very simple, but a little more to it, which is called the pencil tool. All right. Pencil tool is up here underneath the paintbrush tool. It's the letter N is what that brings that up. So at first glance, the pencil tool seems like it's just very similar to the brush tool in that if I just draw with it, it just creates a line, right? Nothing much to it. However, the pencil tool does have quite a bit more capability than that. The reason that it's called the pencil tool is just like a real pencil, things are very changeable, right? With a pencil, I can erase things and redraw, that sort of stuff. The pencil tool is that way as well. So we talked about earlier about the difference between points that are by each other or touching and points that are actually the same point to create a shape. With the pencil tool, I can do lines a little bit at a time. So if I go and draw a line like this, I can now take my pencil tool, and you see how my pencil tool normally has like an asterisk by it? That means I'm about to start a new line. If I take my pencil tool though and put it near the line I just drew, near the end, you'll see that asterisk changes to a slash. This means I'm going to continue the line that I was already drawing, okay? So I can just click and draw another part, and you'll see that it just connects those two together, and I end up with a clean line, right? Come over here, add it on. So with the pencil tool, I can do my drawings just a little bit at a time. I don't need to worry about doing it all at once because it will add to it, okay? Now, another thing is that with the pencil tool, so Christine, that's what you wrote. The thing about the pen tool, as you're going to see, is precision. The pencil tool gives you a great ability to do this. The pencil tool can't touch the pen tool on precision, and really nothing else can either. You'll see when we get the pen tool is what we're going to be spending most of the time on today. So, all right. So the other thing is, let's say I change my mind and I decide that I didn't want it to come up here. I'm like, you know what, down here, I actually wanted it to curve down here. I can take my pencil tool and I can go anywhere in the line. And you see, I move it to where the asterisk disappears. I have nothing there. And I can now continue along. And it just erases everything after that point and creates new. Okay? So this allows me to fine-tune things after the fact. And I'm like, I don't like that curve. Let's bring it out like that with the pencil tool. Okay? Now, another thing about the pencil tool is it doesn't have to be used on things that you made with the pencil tool. I can come here and let's say I go to the ellipse tool and I draw a circle. Okay. I'm going to go to my pencil tool and I'm going to go right into the side of the circle and I'm just going to draw a little loop off of it. And you see it broke the circle and took that loop off. Let's go do another one down here so I can affect that way. Okay, so the pencil tool can change any line that is selected. It doesn't need to be a line that was drawn with the pencil tool. So Chris, what you said, it has free range as to what you, does it have free range as to what you draw? What do you mean by that? You can definitely draw whatever you want with it. Gotcha. Okay, yeah, you can definitely that way. So here's a couple of other things about the pencil tool. Let me get rid of those. If I hold down the option key, I'm going to go back to my pencil tool and I'm going to draw a little circle here. And now let's say I want a straight line off of that. If I hold down the option key, I get this little like underscore next to it. That means it's going to keep the line straight. So I can move it wherever I want, but I can draw an actual straight line, giving me a little more precision and control that way. Okay. Now, another thing that the pencil tool is that if I hold down that option, or sorry, not option, if I hold down shift instead of option, it does straight lines, but it locks them to 45-degree angles. So let's say I know I want this to go straight up or back that way or straight backwards. That will, holding down shift will do that, lock it to a specific angle. Okay. So that's the pencil tool. It's pretty straightforward in its use, but it's not as simple as just like a brush tool. It actually does have quite a bit of capability for like editing and making changes as you go through things. Okay. Any questions at all on the pencil tool? All right. Then we're going to get into the pen tool. I'm going to show you a few things that are hopefully going to help this out. You could definitely use the pencil tool for tracing a template. The pen tool is going to give you more precision, as I'll show you, but you could definitely use it, yeah. So, okay, before we dig into the pen tool, this is the thing about the pen tool. The pen tool is not intuitive, right? The pencil tool, I just take it and I draw. It's like drawing just like with a regular pencil, so I'm used to that. I understand how it's going to work. The pen tool is a specialized tool. And so the first time you bring it out, if you haven't learned how to use it, it just seems to be doing whatever it wants. It doesn't seem to make any sense, okay? So I'm going to go to my pen tool here. And if I just click and drag, it's not doing anything like I wanted it to do. But that's because that's not how I use the pen tool. What the pen tool does is the pen tool allows you to place anchor points. Okay, and if you remember the points, any line, I'm going to go to my brush or my pencil tool again. I'm just going to draw a line like this. And I want you to see this line is also made up of points. I've got a point here, a point there, a point there, a point there, a point there. They're all along here, and the line is connecting those points. Okay, so no matter what I create in Illustrator, no matter what a tool I use to do that, is that the pen tool, it's always got points and lines, okay? So yeah, the pen tool is allowing me to place those points. Now, we're going to talk about other things we can do with those points in a minute, but let's just start with that. It allows us to place the points where we want the points to be. And then it automatically connects the points with a line, okay? So if I come here and I just click there and release, I'm not going to hold it down or anything, just click and release. I've made a point there. And you see, it shows me a preview of where the line's going to go as I move out to find my next point. So I want my next point there. Now there's a line connecting those. Come down to another point here. Now there's a line connecting those. Do another point here. And if I go back to the original point, I get a little circle by my pen tool. That tells me it's not going to actually make a new point there. It's going to connect the line to that original point and close out my shape. Then I've got this shape. Okay. So I did that just by clicking on those 4 points, and that connected the lines automatically and drew that shape for me. Okay. So that is the pen tool in its most simplest form. Just the click, 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 connect the lines. Before we go into what else we can do with the pen tool, though, I want to take a moment and I want to talk about points and lines so we have a better understanding of this. I'm going to draw a circle here. Yeah, exactly. And I'm going to make a copy of that circle, and we're just going to pretend that this is 2 points. Okay? These are 2 points. So the fastest way to get from one point to the next would be to just draw a straight line, right? So here's my straight line connecting those 2 points, and that is what the pen tool did by default, is connect those. Oh, I did the wrong. I did fill. We want to give that a stroke, not a fill. So this is the default thing the pen tool is doing. I draw a point, I draw another point, the line goes between them. But the reason the line is able to go straight from this point over here to this point over here is that the line leaves the point already in the direction of this one. So let me ask you, what would happen? What would happen if there was a line leaving this point going that way? Okay. So this is going up this direction. What is that line going to have to do in order to get to this point? It's going to have to change direction, right? It's going to have to curve. It's the only way it can get there. So let's take my pencil tool. Let's just say that it does something like this. Okay, so it goes up that way, and then it curves, then it ends up back in that same spot. Well, but it could also have gone up further and then curved and ended up in that spot. It could have gone not as far and then curved and ended up in that spot. It could have left all the way over here, curved down here, gone up here, and entered in that spot. There's all sorts of different lines that could connect these 2 points. And the thing that differentiates them is what direction were they headed in when they left the point, and what direction was it headed in when it entered the point, and how far did it go in that direction before it curved, right? Yeah, rainbow. So that's what we can control with the pen tool. We control where the points are. We control what direction the lines are leaving and entering those points from. And we control how far they're going in that direction before they curve. Does that make sense? Any questions on that? That's kind of a technical readout of why it's doing what it does. So now let's look at an example of that and how we do it. I'm going to go back to my pen tool, okay? So this time, instead of, if I click here and I click there, I get a straight line. This time, if I hit escape, by the way, I hit escape so it stopped drawing that line. Now I'm going to start fresh. This time, though, instead of just clicking, I'm going to click and I'm going to drag. What I just dragged is called a handle. These handles come out of my point, and these handles tell me 2 things. What direction does the line leave and enter the point from, and how far does it go before it curves? So I'm going to say I want it to go straight up, and I want it to go out just a bit. Now I'm going to go back over here, and I'm going to draw that second point, and you see that I get a little curve. Okay. Now this time I'm going to drag it up way high. I'm going to say I want it to go really far. And then I'm going to come over and I'm going to do my second point. So you see I have 3 very different lines, but each one of them is just based upon what direction I pulled the handle in and how far I pulled that handle. So another example would be, let's say I go here and I pull it out that direction. I'm telling it go backwards and up. And then over here, I'm going to say, I want this one to enter backwards and down. And I end up with a very, very different line, even though this could have just gone straight between the 2 of them. Okay, so again, all I'm doing is clicking and dragging to pull out a handle. The handle says what direction the line leaves the point in and how far it goes in that direction. And then when I click my next one, I can do the same thing, click and drag out a handle. And you can see that the line changes to show me what it's going to do based upon how far I'm dragging it out and what direction I'm dragging it out. Okay. It ends, yeah, so there's a front handle and a back handle on every point. The back handle is the direction the line's going to enter the point. The front handle is the direction the line's going to leave the point. Exactly. So I come down here, pull that, and you see how I've got 2 handles, and I can pull it around so that it's coming in that direction, or leaving that direction, but like it's always the back handle is going to be the way the line's coming in, and the front handle is going to be the way the line's leaving. That makes sense? And I can adjust that like so. Okay. So that's the basics of using the pen tool. Now let's talk about a couple other things I can do with the pen tool. Okay. Oh, you're going to get some great practice. One of the things we're doing this week is a really good practice sheet on it, but it makes more sense once we've done these. So another thing we can do with the pen tool, okay? We can adjust things. Well, actually, I'm going to go back to this because I want to talk about the tools we use to adjust things. When we're working with the pen tool, we are often working with the direct select tool as well. We're also often working with the anchor point tool, which is under the pen tool right there, okay? So let's talk about what those two different things do. I'm going to draw a line there. I've drawn 3 points, and I've pulled handles out on all 3 of those points like so. Okay? So now that I have this drawn, I'm going to go to my direct selection tool, and I'm going to go to this point that I drew up at the top. You see when I select that, I can see the handles. So I can adjust this now. I can pull this handle out further, give it a bigger curve. I can swing it down like that if I want to. Pull this one in. And you'll notice when I drew it originally, it pulled them out the same distance, at the same, you know, like so. However far I pulled the front out, that's how far the back went out. With this, I can adjust it. Maybe the back has a much bigger curve, and the front just has a small curve. But I can fine tune those adjustments using the direct selection tool and manipulating the handles after the fact. Okay. So the direct selection tool can do more than just the points, it can do the handles as well. Now, notice though, when I curve with the direct selection tool, when I pull a handle up or down, notice the back handle stays in sync with it. That is to create a curve. If the back handle and the front handle make a straight line together, then you've got a smooth curve. But sometimes I don't want a smooth curve. Sometimes I want a corner. Well, to do a corner, all I need to do is hold down the Option key before I move one handle, and it will break that connection, or Alt key if you're on a Windows computer. And you see I'm able to break that connection. So now these two handles act independent of each other. And it creates a corner because the line is entering in that direction and it's leaving down in that direction. Yeah, Option on a Mac and Alt on a Windows computer, exactly. Okay, so that is using the direct selection tool with these points and lines. The other tool I have here is underneath the pen tool, I've got the anchor point tool. The anchor point tool does a couple of things. One, if I click on an existing point, it sucks the handles in. Did you see that? I clicked that and it pulled them right in. That allows me to kind of start over. Two, the direct selection, or the anchor point tool does not keep that connection. It pulls them independently right from the beginning. Click this again, sucks them into each other, click and drag them out again. I can grab that one and break that connection if I want to. Okay. So let me give you an example of when that's useful. I'm going to go to my rectangle tool and I'm going to draw a rectangle. Now, the reason I'm starting with the rectangle tool is I want to show you this. These tools, you don't have to be working with the pen tool from the beginning to use them. They all work with any points or lines. Doesn't matter what I made them with. I'm going to go to my pen tool now, and I'm going to click on this point, right, just somewhere in the path, and I get a little plus sign next to my pen tool. That is because I want to add an anchor point. You'll see it added one right on that spot. Now I can go to my direct select tool and I can grab that anchor point and pull it up. Totally change the shape of that. I can also go to my pen tool and I can put it on an anchor point that already exists and I get a minus sign. Let's go to this one down here. This is delete an anchor point. If I put it on any point that's there, it's going to get rid of it. Well, if I get rid of this anchor point, right now there's a line going from this point to that point and one going from that point to that point. So if I get rid of this one down here, the line's going to have to go from this point diagonally down there, and that's exactly what will happen. So I can change my shape that way by removing anchor points that I don't want to have. I can also, let's get rid of this one here, and let's go to my anchor point tool. I can drag I can drag handles out of a point that didn't have them originally. So these are corners, so there are no handles. But I can click and drag it and make handles. Let's go ahead and make a little wave here. I'm going to go to my direct select tool, pull that over like that, and create a wave. Okay, so lots of ability to manipulate existing points and lines, yeah, using these tools. And again, if they're all kind of working together, the pen tool, the anchor point tool, and the direct select tool, in order to allow you to set this up the way you want to. Okay. Now, a couple of other nice tricks when working with this pen tool. Let's say that I'm tracing something. I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to put this on here. And I'm going to go to my layers and double click on that and make it a template layer. And I'm going to make a new layer to get started. And I'm going to go to my pen tool. If I'm tracing something, I can manipulate the lines and the points and the handles in the middle of tracing. So I don't need to really worry about the whole thing. I just need to worry about 2 points at a time. So I'm going to click right here and I'm going to drag a little handle out, and then I'm going to come over to this end. I'm just going to click and drag that out. And then it's not quite the right angles. So what I'm going to do before I move on, if you press and hold the Option or the Alt key while you're on the pen tool, it switches to the Convert Anchor Point tool. And if you press and hold the Command or the Control key, it switches to the Direct Select tool. So I'm going to hold down Command or Control if you're on Windows, and I'm going to just go ahead and play around with that line there, that handle, and that one there, and just get this line the way I want it to be before I move on to the next one. Okay. Now I'm going to go to my next one. When I release that, I'm back to the pen tool. I'm going to go here and I'm going to pull that out. And obviously that's completely wrong. So I'm going to go to I'm going to hold down Option to go to my anchor point tool. I'm going to break that connection and pull that in. And so you see, I can work with these things in the process of drawing. I don't need to like worry, oh, the whole thing's not working right. It's not a problem. I just do things one point at a time, holding down Option or Alt to go back to my anchor point tool, pull that in. And you see, it gives me an ability to be very precise here, to get these precise curves and follow things the way I want them to go. Now, let's say I screwed up right here and I accidentally switched to another tool. Well, if I go back to my pen tool and I just start drawing, these aren't going to be connected anymore. But a really cool thing I can do is I can go back and click on the last point I was on, and it will reconnect them. So now I've got those reconnected. Let's drag those out again. Play with those handles. And go up here and drag out another big curve up here. Now, in order to get this one precise, I'm going to hold down Option or Alt to get my Convert Anchor Point tool there. I'd probably want another, oh, whoops, that's not what I meant to do. I'd probably want another point in this curve. Maybe I'll go down and add one there. And that'll allow me to play around with, I'm going to hold down Shift, or no, like Command or Control. So I'm on the Direct Select tool. That'll allow me to control it from here, get a little more precision. And I'll just go back and click back on my original point. And of course, I need to now adjust this anchor point. Hold down Option or Alt to bring that in. And it just, takes some fine tuning and some finessing. But now I've got a pretty decent tracing of the shell of that umbrella. Okay, so you can work with these things while you're drawing, or you can go in later. I can come up in here and say, look at that. That doesn't look very good. I'm going to just switch to my Convert Anchor Point tool. Sorry, it used to be called the Convert Anchor Point tool. I switched this to Anchor Point, so you'll hear me say that sometimes. Let's go ahead and just kind of drag that. Or maybe this one doesn't even need to be here. Let's just go to my pen tool and just get rid of that point and I can just curve it from here. So again, I can control these things after the fact. I don't need to worry about perfection from the beginning, okay? So that's another thing I can do. Now, two other, just gonna get rid of that template layer. Another thing I'm going to show you that is a little more of a niche thing. Well, you'll use it a lot as you get more advanced with the pen tool, but in the beginning, don't worry about it if you're not using it that much, but just so you know it's there. So you notice when I click and drag a point, it automatically pulls out that back handle. Front and back always come out together, okay? What if I don't want front and back out? Maybe I just need one handle. I just need that back handle, or I just need the front handle. Well, if I click and drag out like I just did, and then I come back and I click directly back on the point I just made, it pulls back in the front handle. So you see how the back handle's out, but the front handle's not. And so now I can make a little corner there. And contrary-wise, let's say I just want the front handle out, not the back one, I can come and click on a point and release it, so no handle's out. And then I can click back on that point and drag out the front handle to go the other direction. Okay. So you've got a lot of, and one of the exercises we do has you practice that, but you've got control on just bringing out one handle at a time that way. Okay. So that's the pen tool, and it's a technical tool. And but the thing the pen tool does is just like any technical thing. It's like if I sit down and I show you exactly how a saxophone works, that's gonna get you started. You're gonna have a big advantage because before you didn't know how a saxophone works, but then it's just gonna take practice from there. You just have to practice with it, and that's what we're gonna get started with this week. But with enough practice, it becomes very, very precise. So let me give an example of what I mean by that with the precision. I'm gonna go to my view, and I'm just gonna turn on the grid. So I've got a nice little mathematical grid here. And I'm going to go to my pen tool. And I'm going to come and I'm going to make a point right here. And that point in the grid, actually, I'm going to go to view and I'm going to go to snap to grid. So it always ends up right in the point. I'm going to make a point right there. I just clicked and released because I don't want any handles on that point. Now I'm going to come up here, and I do want handles up here. I'm going to hold down Shift, though, so that when I drag my handles, they lock at 45-degree angles. So since I know I want these ones straight across, holding down Shift will let me do that. Okay, now I'm going to come down here. Oh, sorry, I'm doing once you. Oh yeah, the grid's not actually part of the drawing. It'll disappear. It won't even. If I were to print this, it wouldn't even show. Yeah. So at this next point I'm going to make, I don't want a front handle. I only want the back handle. Okay. So, no, I'm sorry, backwards. I don't want a back handle. I don't want the front handle. So I'm going to click and release. Then I'm going to click on it again and drag out that handle. Now I'm going to come down here and click and release there. Okay. Now I'm going to come over here. This one is the opposite. I want the back handle, but I don't want the front handle. So I'm going to click and drag, which will bring out both handles. Then I'm going to click back on that original point to bring in the front handle. Now I'm going to come up here, drag that out. And then I'm going to come back and click on my original point. Okay, and I've created this heart, but that's not actually what I want to do. I'm going to hold down Shift with my selection tool, and I'm going to rotate this. And I'm holding down Shift so it'll rotate in exact 45-degree angles because I want it completely upside down. And now I'm going to go to my polygon tool, and I'm going to drag out a polygon. I want to reduce the amount of sides to be a triangle, and I'm going to hold down Shift because I want that triangle to be straight up and down. And let's make it about like that. I'm going to drag that triangle down into place right here. And now I'm going to go to my anchor point tool. And I'm going to go to this part of the triangle right here. And I'm going to select that, and I'm going to drag out my anchor points. I'm going to pull this inside one right there. And I'm going to grab this back one and pull it right back in. I don't want a back anchor point. But I do, let's actually move this one. I'm going to do my direct selection tool. Let's bring it down a bit. That works. Now I'm going to go back to my anchor point tool, and I'm going to drag out the anchor points on this side. And I'm going to click this back one and bring it back in because I don't need it. Okay. Now up here, I'm going to go to my anchor point tool, and I'm going to drag out these ones. And I'm going to bring one of them down here. I'm going to go to my direct select tool of the other one so I don't suck them in. Now I'm going to select this, and I'm going to go to my shape builder tool, combine it, and get rid of my stroke, and add the fill. Now let's go ahead and turn off my grid. So I've drawn a spade here, right? So looking at that spade, how good do you think it would look compared to that if I'd done that with the pencil tool or with the brush tool? What the pen tool gives me is precision. The pen tool allows me to make curves and points in ways that are exact, in ways that I just really could not do it freehand. So that's why you want to practice with it. Does that make sense? All right. Then let's take our break now. And when we come back, we're going to go in and we're going to look at the assignment for this week, and I'm going to do some demonstrations for you as we're working through it, okay? Let me go ahead and just set a timer here. Well, that was the pen tool that I was using, Christina. So you're right. I did that with the pen tool. Well, not where I meant to go. All right. I'll see you guys in 15. No, I did that all with the pen tool. All right, we are back. Can you guys hear me okay again? Okay, great. So there's a couple of other tools that are just quick things I want to talk about before we jump in there. One of them, underneath my pen tool, this is actually a relatively new tool. It's called the curvature tool. It actually acts very similar to the pen tool, but its purpose is to create curves. If I click and make a point, and then come and click and make another point, when I drag away from that point, I'm not holding down the click at all. I'm just pulling away, and you see how it's automatically creating this curve, and I can come and click on that, and it connects that and makes a curve that way. And so I can kind of adjust a smooth curve throughout the whole thing rather than worrying about each individual. Like, this is going to be most useful if I'm not changing directions a lot or things like that, but just need a good smooth curve. Sometimes it's if I'm doing just a part of a project. Maybe I have a line segment that, ran out like so, and I've got another one over here. And so maybe I want to play around with the curves on that, and I can come up and I can click on, I switched my curves tool, and it's continuing on from that last point I made. So I can come up and just kind of make a point up here and drag that out and link those two like so. Oh, but I created a curve there, so I'd need to go to my anchor point tool. Or actually, let's go to direct select tool so I don't ruin that second one, and drag in that bottom handle. So that's the curve tool. The curvature tool is basically to give you a single function in order to do those smooth curves. It's supposed to simplify things from the pen tool for doing these full curves like that. Okay. All right. So, and then there was one other thing I was going to tell you about. I'm trying to remember what it was. May have to remember as we start looking at the actual assignment. Oh, I remember what it was. And some of you have started the assignment will probably see immediately where this is useful, but I'm going to just show you the basics of it right now. Oh yeah, nice. Let's just try to think of a good. Let's do it with a heart. Let's say that I draw a line segment like so. And then I'm going to go to my curvature tool. Oh, no, I don't want to grab that point. Let's just drag one out here. Whatever. Let's use the curvature tool from the beginning. I'm going to click a point there, bring one out there, click another point, and bring it down like so. I'm going to escape. I'm going to go to my direct select tool and just kind of move that so it's in line with the one up there. And then I'm going to fill this with red. And then I'm going to hold down Shift and Option and shrink it down a little bit. Oh, well, let's just hold down. Let's copy it first. I copy it and paste in front and then shrink it. And then I'm going to move it up against this line. And I'm going to make it a little darker. And then one more time, copy it, paste it in front, shrink it down a little bit, move it against that line, and make it a bit darker again. And let's select these and let's get rid of the strokes. Okay, so here I've done this pattern, I guess you could call it, or this illustration. And I want it to stay like this. I'm not going to move these around. I want these three things to be constantly in that orientation with each other. So I'm going to group them. I'm going to select these three things, and I'm going to go up to Object, and I'm going to choose Group, or you can do Command G on your Mac or Control G on a Windows computer. Now they're grouped, they stay together. Even if I come in here and shrink it, they shrink together, or they grow together. They act as a single object until I were to ungroup them. So it's a nice way to organize things. But now these are grouped. I want this to kind of be like a heart type shape thing. So I'm going to come up here and I'm going to go to Object, and I'm going to go to Transform, and I'm going to choose the one called Reflect. Okay. Now it gives me this window, and I'm going to click Preview so I can see what it's doing. So if right now it's going to reflect it vertically, like you saw, or I could have reflect it horizontally, which is up and down, but I do want vertically. And I'm going to, instead of clicking OK, which would just flip it that way, I'm going to click Copy. And what that did is it created a perfect mirror image of what I drew. Does that make sense? Now, anyone who's looked at the assignment for this week has seen a butterfly that this can save you a lot of time on. We're going to look at that when we do some examples in a minute. All right. Okay, so let's jump in here and look at our assignment. And the assignment, I'm going to do a lot of examples. And in fact, one part of it, I'm going to do the whole thing. Let's go down here to week 2 assignment, Illustrator's pen and pencil tools. Again, make sure to read the background. It talks about the pen tool, the curvature tool, the pencil tool. But I'm going to jump down here to the prompt. So it says, this week's assignment is a series of exercises to help you learn how to control the pen, pencil, and curvature tools and learn how to utilize each. The Illustrator document below contains 3 artboards. Each has a template with different lines and shapes for you to draw. So I'm going to click on here to download it. Sometimes when people download this, it just depends on the browser you're using and the version of your system and stuff. It adds an extension .ps to the end of the file. And if it does that, it tries to open the file in a different program and tells you it can't open it. So if you download this file and you get a message that says, oh, that can't be opened, then go to the file itself and get rid of the .ps at the end of the name so it ends in .ai, and that should fix the problem. Okay, but usually it works just fine, as you can see there. So what this says, you are going to use the pencil tool and the curvature tool and the pen tool in order to trace these things. Okay, so you've got the top one, middle one, bottom one. They're all the same, but we're going to use those 3 different tools in order to see how those work. And remember, we can hold down Shift in order to lock things at 45-degree increments. So if I go to my pencil tool, for example, here, pencil tool, and I click on that first point, I can hold down Shift and it will keep the line locked at 45-degree increments, making it, drag this wrong thing, making it very easy to trace this. Okay, so just remember that holding down Shift is going to get you that 45-degree lock, and all the angles on this first shape are 45-degree, like increments of 45 degrees. I'm holding it between every time I let go. I'm like letting go of the whole thing and then doing it again. Yeah. And then same, you're going to draw this guy, but all using the pencil tool. So here I would be just kind of freehanding around his eyeball, right? Now, a couple of tips. This should be set this way by default, but you want your fill set to no fill. If it's set to white or another color, it's going to start blocking the instructions while you're tracing. And we don't want that, right? So try playing around with these things, and you can work on them, some of them with the curvature tool, and come here and click a point right there and click a point right there. Actually, I could probably just bring it up there. Let's bring it about halfway through and get a nice curve. No, probably want to click it down there then. and get a nice curve through on that one. Like so. Now that's going to need some adjustment. So I can hold down, whoop, can switch to my anchor point tool and adjust that. But you're going to play with these different ones. I think you're going to find, I mean, for me anyway, the pen tool is just so much easier to control, not than the pencil tool, but than the curvature tool. See, I can come and grab that and just pull a nice little angle on there. Come and do the same, click a point there, but hold down the option key so I can come adjust this handle in like so. We'll do another one about halfway through. Now, when doing these, a trick is you don't want to do too many points. The more points you do, the more jagged your line is going to be, right? So try to think of kind of the minimum, like where does it change direction, right? Where do I need a point to be in order for me to follow that line? Now, see, I messed that up because I did this one here using the anchor point tool, which meant it broke that line. So I'm going to go back to my anchor point tool, and I'm going to suck those points in and drag them back out again so that they're connected. Because if they're not connected, I'm going to get like a jitter. I don't want that. Okay. I could fine tune that along there. So this first one's pretty straightforward. You're just going to trace these elements using the pencil tool. You can really do, play around with the curvature tool. There's not like a rule of which tool you need to use on which ones, but do it all with the pencil tool, the curvature tool, and the pen tool for these three here. Okay. Any questions on artboard number 1? Okay. So artboard number 2. This one is one of my favorite things we have on here. I did the pencil tool for that first one, Chris. Just held down shift, so I got 45-degree angles. So this one here, if you do it right, this gives you a ton of good practice with the pen tool. This will really kind of solidify, oh, I see how that works. Now, I said if you do it right. I'm going to do the whole thing. I'm going to demonstrate this one from beginning to end. And the reason why is I want all of you to get 100% on this one. If you know, look at how mine turn out. If yours turned out different, erase it and do it again. And if it's still turning out different, you're not able to turn it right, then come in and get some help, and we'll show you what's going on. Because this really can help a lot in making you feel comfortable with the pen tool. Okay, so this one's all done with the pen tool. I'm going to hold down P, and it's basically just a dot to dot. I'm going to follow the instructions. So this first one, I just click here where 1 is, click here where 2 is, continue around through all the numbers, and just click on the points. Now, the instructions end here. So if you turned it in like this, I'm not going to dock your grade because you followed the instructions. But if you want to finish the star, you just click back on the first point. So I click back on the first point, it closes my shape. If, however, you finish here, don't just jump over and start the next one, or you're going to end up with a big line going from the star to the next one. What you want to do is just either hit escape or switch to a different tool, and it'll break that line, and you can come start on the next one. Okay, but yeah. So I'm going to actually finish this. I'm going to go click back on that point with the pen tool and drag it up to the last point and finish the star. Now the circle is where we start playing around with some curves. We're going to click on one, and you'll zoom in on these so you can see them nice. I'm going to click on 1 and drag to 2. So the 2 is where my handle's going, not the point. Click on 1, drag to 2. Now I'm going to go down to 3. Click on 3, and it says to hold shift. That's just to keep the line straight. Drag to 4. Click on 5. Drag to 6. Click on 7. Drag to 8. And then, again, that's the end of the instructions. So if you hit escape and finish it off like this, that's fine. But to finish the whole circle, if you want to, You click back on 1 and drag to 2 again. If I just click on 1, I'm going to get a weird little curve here. I need to click on 1 and drag to 2 in order to get the curve to match the other ones and make a real circle. Okay, so the second one ends up looking just like a circle. Now this one is where we start doing multiple curves. So I'm going to switch back to my pen tool by hitting P on my keyboard. I'm going to click on 1, hold down Shift, and drag to 2. Okay, now I'm going to go to 3. And again, because I dragged that handle out to 2, it's telling the line to go up that way quite a bit. I'm going to click on 3, hold down Shift, and drag to 4. And now I'm pulling out the back handle on 3, so it's even lengthening that curve even more. Fall into place, and I drag out to 4. Go to 5, same thing. Hold down Shift, drag to 6. Go to 7, hold down Shift, click, and drag to 8. Okay, so you end up with these little loopy line there if you do it right. All right, now here's we start mixing corner points with curves. Before we've just doing curves themselves, now we're gonna have some corners on here. Yeah, Bezier game's a good one. So on this one, I'm gonna click on 1, I'm gonna hold down Shift, and I'm gonna drag to 2. And then when you go to 3, it says click here and release. So I'm clicking and releasing, and then it says to click back on the same point that I just made and drag down to 4. So this is, remember I told you if you click and release and then click again on it and drag down, it just drags out the front handle. The back handle stays in, so I get a corner. And I'm going to come here to 5, and I'm going to do the same thing. Click and release, click back on 5, and drag down to 6. And I'm going to go to 7, click and release, click back on 7, drag down to 8. Now, when I'm done, I'm going to hit Escape so it doesn't keep drawing lines. And you can see that's what it should look like. You should have these curves on the bottom with these points on the top if that one's done correctly. Or angles on the points, corners on the points, or on the top. The dragging is bringing out the handles. That's what the dragging is, what pulls the handle away. When you click, it doesn't have any handles at all, so you get a straight line. If you click and drag, it pulls out handles, so you get a curve. Yeah. All right, so here I'm going to click on 1 and drag to 2. So I pulled that handle up there. Then I'm going to go to 3, and I'm going to click on 3, and I'm going to drag to 4. Now, for this one, I'm now going to hold down the Option key or the Alt key on my keyboard. That's going to switch me to my Convert Anchor Point tool. I'm going to click on the one on 5 that I already drew, and I'm going to bring it up to 6. So now my front and my back handles both point up. Now I'm going to go to 7, click on 7, and drag down to 8. Then again, I'm going to hold down Option or Alt. I'm going to click back on that point, on the handle that I did down to 8, and drag it up to 10. Now I'm going to come and click on 11, drag it down to 12, release it, hold down Alt or Option, click back on that handle that I just dragged down there, and drag it up to 14. And then come to 15, click on that and drag down to 16. So again, by doing that, I'm going to use my direct select tool so we can see them. I made it so the handle that says what way the line enters the anchor or the anchor point, and the handle that says what line or what angle the line leaves the anchor point are both pointing up. So the line's coming in from the top and it's going out from the top. And that's how I end up with these points, these corners down at the bottom. Okay, so if you do this one right, you should have these smooth half circles connected by sharp corners down at the bottom. All right, this one here, go back to my pen tool. I'm going to click on 1, hold down Shift and drag to 2. I'm going to come to 3. I'm going to click on 3, hold down Shift and drag to 4 and release. Now, number 5 is a little vague for my taste. It just says click. Doesn't really tell you where to click. They're talking about back on this point here that we did for number 3. So if you remember, if I click back on that point, it's going to pull in the front handle but leave the back handle out. So I come and click on that point, it pulls in that front handle for 5, and then I can go over to 6, and it says to click and release. So I'm going to click and let go. Then I'm going to click back on it and drag down to 7. So again, what number 5 and number 6 are doing are making it so that I only have one handle coming out. The back handle for 5 and the front handle for 6. And that makes it so that the line going forward or behind me gets the curve, but the line going the other way doesn't. And that's why I get that little straight line there. So now I'm going to go over to 8. Same thing. Click and drag to 9. Click back on that point again for 10. Click on 11 and release it. Just a single click and release. Then click back on 11 and drag up to 12. And then I'm going to go to 13, click and drag down to 14. And I end up with this shape where you have these half circles connected by these straight lines with a corner at the connection point. Okay. So there's one more to do, but while you're doing these, if you're paying attention to what's happening to the handles, the front and the back handles, what's happening to the points and the lines while you're doing it, then it'll help you to like get it, oh, okay, you know, kind of that breakthrough and understanding of how the pen tool is working and make it easier for you to do things on your own. Okay. Actually, Chris, that's a great, you know, it is. The pen tool and a lot of the other tools in Illustrator are very, very common tools in what's called CAD software, which is architecture software. That's also vector, just like Illustrator is. So yeah, you're absolutely right. All right, so this is the last one, and this one's a little hard. It's a little more abstract, but just follow the directions specifically, and you should be fine. I'm going to click on the P or hit the P on my keyboard to go to the pen tool, and I'm going to come down here and I'm going to click on 1 and drag to 2 and release it. I'm dragging my handle up here to 2. Oh, in the middle there. Oh, whatever. Now I'm going to go to 3, and it says to click and drag to 4. Now, you'll see that my front and my back handle both came out the same distance. What 5 is going to do is make it so the front handle's longer than the back handle, so I get a bigger curve from the front. So 5 says to click back on the anchor point that I made here, and that sucks in the front handle, and then drag it out again all the way to 6. So you can see now my back handle is the length it always was, but my front handle is much, much longer. And now I'm going to go over to 7. Click on there, drag to 8. And then with 9, I'm going to hold down Option or Alt and click back on 9 and drag to 10. So I'm pulling that front handle back down this direction. Then I'm going to go to 11, click and drag to 12. Then I'm going to go back to that same spot for 13 and click on it again and drag it to 14. So the front handle's shorter than it was. And then I'm going to go to 15 and I'm going to hold down the Alt Option key, click on it and drag it to 16. And this is my finished result. So it's kind of this like swoosh, but the way they know you did it right is notice that they never cross. It does create an open shape in the middle all the way through. Okay, so if you do this one correctly, these are what all those shapes are going to look like. And if you double check them when you're doing them, and if yours didn't turn out that way, redo that one. And if it keeps not turning out that way, then come in and talk to me or to Christy or to the Student Success Center, and we can help you out with that. All right. So here's my last one. Using the pen, curvature, pencil, and shape tools to closely recreate this butterfly, and then have fun coloring it in. When you're through, write a short paragraph of 50 words on the tools that you used and how you recreated the butterfly. Describe what was hard and what came easier for you, along with any insights that you had. Okay, so you've got a lot of places where an obvious shape tool is going to be useful. If I go to my ellipse tool, you can see I've got these circles. And if I put my point right in the middle of the circle, and I hold down Option, which makes it grow from the middle, if you remember, and I hold down Shift to make it a perfect circle, I can just drag out a circle right into that spot. Do the same thing here. Drag out a circle right into that spot. So all these circles are going to be really easy to do using that ellipse tool. And if it's not right quite on, you can use your arrow keys to bump it into place. Okay. The curvature tool could be useful with the body here. Personally, I'd use the pen tool for most of this. I'd probably do a nice outline of the wing with the pen tool. So if I drag that out like so, oh, didn't mean to click twice, and then come up to the next point here and drag that out until I get the right angle. Hold down Alt, or I'm going to hold down Command or Control if you're on a Windows computer to switch to my drag select tool and bring that in a little bit. I'm going to go to this next point here and then significantly go to Command or Control and significantly reduce that curve there. Again, if you're using the pen tool, just worry about 2 points at a time. Don't worry about what's going on outside of those 2 points. Okay. Yeah, I'm not going to be available on Thursday because of Thanksgiving. Yeah. So what my suggestion would be with the butterfly, and this is where I talked about that mirroring thing. Draw the wing, just do like a line from like here to here, from the top of the wing to the bottom of the wing right there, and trace the rest of it. I'm going to do just a super fast. It's not going to be very accurate because I want to be able to show you this. I would normally have many more points, giving me more detail. Of course, that's another thing. Some artists like to do a rough tracing like this to start, and then go in with the other tools and make the adjustments at that point. You can, again, the pen tool allows you to add points that aren't there if you need an extra point. Like for example here, this dips down, so I could go to my pen tool and just click right there to add a new point. Go to drag select tool and just drag that point in a little bit. And use your arrow keys too. So some people like to just do a rough trace and then clean it up after the fact. But let's just say, I'm going to just do these ones. I'm going to come in here and let's say that I've filled that with the purple. I'm going to go to my layers and I'm going to bring my circles that I drew up on top of that one in my sub layers. And let's just pretend I'm going to go to my properties and fill this one with a yellow. Let's get rid of the stroke. And what I'm going to do now, I'm going to select these holding down the shift key while I click on them. So those are both selected. And then I'm going to go to the eyedropper tool and click on this. So I grab for both those shapes. So obviously this is not most of what needs to be done, but I just want to show you with this rough out. Let's say that I've done the whole wing now the way that I want it over here. I'm going to select this and I'm going to go to the whole thing, and I'm going to go to object, and I'm going to go to group, and then I'm going to go to object and transform and reflect and choose copy and just drag it into place on the other side. And then all I need to worry about at that point is the body in the middle. Okay, so you've got a lot of detail on those wings. If you spend the time getting one wing exactly the way you want it, you can just group it and then mirror it to save yourself a ton of time when you're putting it in place on the other side. Does that make sense? And you can work with, oh wait, let's see here. Yeah, you can work with the pencil tool too. It's pretty rough outside the outside. So you might even find, depending on how steady you are with it, you might find that you're more, I'm going to go to the pencil tool, more inclined to trace it this way. Just be careful to always click back on the last point you made, and you don't need to do it all at the same time. Now let me show you a trick with the pencil tool. I'm going to turn on the stroke there so I can actually see what I'm tracing. You see how that rough that line is that I just drew? is pretty big, and so it's, you know, my hand steadiness is making it a bit rough. Well, with the pencil tool, we've got another really nice kind of complementary tool that works with it. I'm going to come over to this other artboard just to demonstrate it, and then we'll go back and use it on that one. I'm going to just draw a couple of lines like that. And if I go into, let's give it some stroke. If I go into the group of tools that is where the pencil tool is, oh, I've got a weird, I feel like I must have reset my tool, there we go. I had it on the simple ones, that's why. Okay, so if I go into the ones that are underneath the pencil tool, I've got one called the smooth tool. Okay, yeah, exactly, Christina. The smooth tool is basically, I need to have selected what I'm using it on. It's a very subtle tool, but I just brush over those, and you see how it's just slightly smoothing out the corners. The more I brush it, the more it smooths it out. So I could really bring down this curve quite a bit if I do it multiple times. And it's changing where, you know, how many points they are, where those points are, in order to help me get those smooth. Okay, so I could go back to this line I drew on my butterfly. Again, make sure it's selected, and go to my smooth tool, and just kind of smooth some of that roughness out. There is a little bit of roughness, so I don't want to get rid of all of it, but just some of those weird like bumps and stuff that I had, I can smooth out using the smooth tool. Okay, now again, remember, if I use the pencil tool for this, I need to get all the way around and reconnect it. I'm going to do a very fast and rough. Again, if you are using the pencil tool, I would personally recommend doing a little bit at a time. Otherwise, it's easy to mess it up. I'm going to rough, fast all the way around. Make sure you connect it to the end so it's a full shape and can be filled. If you just draw and don't reconnect it to the initial point, it won't be fillable. Yeah, Chris, exactly. You can use the pencil tool in here, but again, if you don't connect it to the end, it's not going to be fillable. So I could come in here and run around like so. And again, my favorite thing about the pencil tool is the ability to just do a little bit at a time. So don't worry about going all the way around in one fell swoop. Maybe I do something like that, but now I connect it at that end. Then I could go to my smooth tool. I'm just going to kind of bump these. And I also want to go to my direct select tool, and I'm going to just pull these ones. Whoops, not the handle. Pull these anchor points. I'm going to zoom in to get this more into place with the example. And again, the tools we've been talking about, you can use on any of these. So I can get rid of that anchor point tool by switching to the pen tool and clicking on it. I can go to my direct select tool and play with the handles in order to get it to curve more the way that I need it to. I can go to the anchor point tool in order to create corners and stuff. It doesn't, you know, it doesn't matter that I started this drawing or this part of the drawing with the pencil tool. That's not a problem. I can still make all of my fine-tune adjustments with these other tools if I feel like they're going to give me better results. Whoop, flipped the wrong way. If I feel like they're going to give me better results than using just the pencil tool alone, mix them and match them. There's no need to just stick with one tool when doing these things. You just use whatever is going to work best in order to take you to the next step, right? So I'm gonna go to my anchor point tool so I can break those handles, bring that in like that. That's fairly close. So then I could now fill that with color since I brought it all the way around. Okay. Yeah, you can select them and then come up to Object and Arrange to bring it forward or backward, or do it over here in this arrange section, or I usually just go over to the layers and drag them, and then you can move them up and down that way for sure. Okay. But yeah, my big time-saving tip for you is spend all your time working on one wing, completely closed around, and then group that wing, reflect it, and you'll have the other wing already all done. Okay. So that's our assignment for this week. You're going to do all three of these pages. This one, again, you can use the pencil tool, use the pencil tool, the curvature tool, the pen tool on those. This middle one is all pen tool. And then this one over here, any mixture that you want of shape tools, pencil tool, pen tool, curvature tool, in order to recreate this and then color it. And then again, don't forget, one thing I see people lose points a lot is they forget to do the text box down at the bottom and type at least 50 words on what tools you used and any insights that you gained as you did it. Okay. On the first sheet, Christina, you don't need any shape tools. The first sheet, it is specifically the pencil tool, the pen tool, or the curvature tool, but you can use those as you see fit. Okay, so Chris, you're going to use the type tool, and we're going to talk a lot more about type later, but like all you do is go to the type tool, come and click and drag a frame. It fills it with text, and then you can just start typing. If you've gone away from it and need to type some more, you're just going to double click in there until you have a cursor, and then you can start typing again. Yeah, it's like PowerPoint on steroids, but yeah, PowerPoint is the same sort of ideal, yeah. You need to drag out that text frame first. Yeah, Christine, I don't know what happened. There used to be one that worded it more specifically, but it got switched out to this one. I mean, you're welcome to use the pencil tool for the whole thing. That's what it specifically says at this point. But I personally use a mixture of them because you get more, you could get more precision. The pencil works great for these three, though. All right. On this page, yeah, you need to trace all 9 of them and try different tools. Try playing around, see what works better for you and what works worse. On this one, this one is a matter of like experimenting with them and seeing what ones allow you to get that precision the best. No, just trace them. Yeah, the only one that you need to worry about coloring is the butterfly. Yep, that's definitely true. It's a really good practice sheet. Hang on to it. And just remember, if you get, like I was just noticing this, and I want to point out, if you end up with a curve or something like that, remember, all you need to do to turn it into a point is get rid of, first of all, whatever anchor point is there. And then with, like, let's just say that I had, I'm going to pull out the handles. Let's say I had a curve like this. If I just click that with the anchor point tool, it sucks those handles in. And now I can click to my direct selection tool and just put that in place where it needs to go. So yeah, my anchor point tool is going to allow me to create curves where there are currently corners and allow me to create corners where there are currently curves. Okay. So any questions, any other additional questions on the assignment for this week? All right. Well, again, just focus, have some, if you set aside time for this one, it's actually quite a bit of fun. If you're stressed about time, it's going to be stressful, obviously, but just focus on those lines and how to control them, how to manipulate them, because that's really what this is all about, is learning to have control of those lines, which means having control of the points, the handles, and the lines themselves. Chris, are you talking about the discussion post? Yeah, there's no screenshot required for that one. You can just type in it. But you can submit an image if it backs up, if it helps what you're saying for sure. All right. Well, you guys all have a fantastic Thanksgiving too. I hope you have a lot of fun and eat some good food. And I thank you guys for joining me here. And I will look forward to seeing you guys next Tuesday. All right. Talk to you later.